about it.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Coast-to-Coast Combat Hour. I'm your host, Matthew Hawkins, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Ed Carbajal. Ed, we were just talking about some of the nonsense from the Fanatics over the weekend. You survived it, but we're not going to get too deep into that. But how you doing, brother?
I'm good. I mean, you should let us know how you're doing since you were sick last week, and I had to freestyle it on my own. I was looking for feedback because I'm not used to loading pre-recorded stuff for the podcast. But yeah, look, you sound healthy, so I guess you're doing well.
Yeah, I'm back physically. I do still have a slight cough, still some congestion. Yeah, just a crazy cough, man. Luckily, I didn't have a crazy fever, but it was just a nonstop cough that I couldn't shake. So that just wore me the hell out. So
yeah. Let me really quick before we get into recapping the UFC 305. I was you said I was at the very first Fanatics Fest over the weekend. Sports collectibles, whatever you want to call it. If you didn't see my post, I did put it on the YouTube channel and I posted on social media. The presence of TKO, aka the UFC and the WWE, in the Jacob Javits Center was half of everybody else that was there, including NHL, NFL, baseball, and then there was obviously like vendor space, but most of it, like if you walked in there and didn't think it was a WWE, it was reminiscent. Put it like this: it was reminiscent of International Fight Week. I actually felt like I was at International Fight Week. The vibe I got as far as the visuals when I first walked in to the Javits Center on Saturday afternoon, was crazy. Michael Chandler was there, Alex Beheaded was there, Khalil Roundtree was there, which is crazy because the day that they announced, Beheaded and Roundtree, they were both near each other. So I'm wondering if they signed the contracts in the Javits Center or something. But it was crazy. I mean, the company that called Fanatics is properly named because I've never seen so many insane sports fans in my life. To be honest with you, I prefer International Fight Week and fucking Comic-Cons over the crowd that was there, especially in New York with a bunch of like fat New Yorkers and sports collectible guys yelling at their kids because the parents are the ones that are actually going crazy to get autographs and shit. So it was insane, but it was fun too. And then obviously the Jake Paul Mike Tyson press conference, which let's be honest, that was not fun.
No, you gave me a heads up. I threw it on YouTube, and it was a shit show from start to finish. It's weird. It's weird to think that everything could be so comically bad and so disorganized and so. I mean, in a time when we have better communication than ever, when they can literally send out a group text to all the media that they've allowed to be there to let them know where to be and how to be. Like, you have to chase down information. You got Ryan Clark up on the stage asking questions like he's never watched a boxing match in his entire life, which piggybacks off of his MMA takes. It just goes to show if you're part of the machine, then you don't have to know anything. You just have to be able to hook a microphone to your jacket and stand there and talk.
Yeah, man. And I will say, what's up? I will say, when I walked out of that thing, it made me feel thankful that for the way the UFC and Dana White do press conferences. I on my train ride back home, I even made a post about it. I was like, man, for all the stuff you want to call Dana White the kingpin or whatever, bad guy because he's rich bad guy or whatever the hell you want to call him. But at least when the UFC puts on a press conference, it's here are your fighters. What are your questions? And then that's it. There's no whatever the fuck boxing and that was. There's none of that. It's just awful. It's awful and painful to sit through. Physically painful to sit through.
Well, it makes for a long day, and just you're not you're there to do your job. It's not like you're just some fan showing up. You're traveling to cover the event to try to help
Yeah,
promote
especially when you
them.
come with questions written down that you want to ask, and then you don't even get to ask them because their scheduling was all shot to shit too. And you got the guy that's not even fighting eating up most of the time of the press conference.
Chatting away stuff. Yeah, I don't. I mean, the whole thing is a bit of a joke. I mean, I would say it's more than a bit of a joke. Um, I
I felt
I
bad for
like.
Mike Tyson. I'm not gonna lie. Like I felt bad for him more than anything.
Well, yeah, because he's a part of a circus act, and,
Hmm.
and I understand getting the money, and we've kind of come around to Jake Paul not being, necessarily a bad thing for combat sports, but um, I don't. I mean, to me, like I put the onus on this on like Netflix and stuff because they're clearly the ones who are making this spectacle that it can be, and allowing. I imagine they're bringing a lot to the table to get Mike Tyson on their streaming platform to help
Hmm.
eventually promote stuff down the line. But I kind of like the world better when we didn't like have athletic commissions that just okayed 60-year-old men fighting.
Yeah, they just
I
want to
feel
get
like,
that bag. Yeah,
yeah, I mean, I feel like, they all 60 is the new 40 and all that bullshit. No, 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 no. Mike Tyson's brain is still the brain of a 58-year-old man, 57-year-old man.
yeah.
And, I mean, let's be honest. They show all these highlights of him knocking out like Frank Bruno in 1988, and then he walks out on the stage, and you're like, "What is this? His dad?" Like, I mean, like seriously, like
I
it's not
mean,
the
like
same. It's not the
he
same
looks
human
old, but
being.
he's still an intimidating
He's
figure
still Mike
in person.
Tyson, and he's still an old Mike Tyson. But you know,
I just didn't like
Ali would shadow box in his later days, and you'd be like, "Oh man, like he'd probably knock out me. I'm a stooge." But like, to I don't know. It just, I mean, to me, only something bad can happen.
yeah.
Like, oh, like not. I don't think he can beat Jake Paul. And I think he's probably going to get hurt or really hit
No,
hard and
yeah.
put down.
I mean, I hope. I mean, the whole thing draw is the what if factor, and I hope the what if happens, and for Mike Tyson's sake, because I like him, and I think he's I've always liked him. I've never not liked Mike Tyson, even with all the nonsense going on, the stuff that came out afterwards. So, and it's funny because when he was there, he was even telling people like, "Hey, everybody, let's be respectful." Like, Jake Paul was the one like dropping it, and I mean, and he was he was feeling everyone's impatience with everything that happened too. You could tell. I just felt bad for him.
And it's funny. You feel bad for him because it's like he doesn't. I feel like he's missing a lot of this like passive aggressive shit talking and this kind of like side speak and like like he comes from an era kind of where like I'm just gonna kill you and I'm gonna eat your kids, like as opposed to now it's like, well, you might have been the villain, but now you're facing a YouTube. So it's like I don't think he really like comes around to that. I think in his mind it's supposed to be a fight. Like him being a YouTube star should be essentially irrelevant. Like we're gonna go put on boxing gloves and try to kill each other.
Yeah.
Like I don't understand this, but the whole thing's weird. But we'll see when it goes down. I guess November 15th. So we'll see.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm gonna watch. You're gonna watch. We know
It's
how
on
this.
Netflix. It's gonna be on
Yeah, like I
Netflix.
mean, I know
So,
how this
like,
unfolds.
if you have
But
Netflix,
like
you're not gonna not watch it. Yeah.
but I don't think anybody's gonna walk away and be after the next day and be like, "Man, I'm really glad that I sat and watched that." Like, that was a boxing exhibition that
Un-
I can't
unless he
pass
shuts
up.
off Jake Paul.
Yes, if he
Unless.
does that, then you're gonna have the viral moment of the century.
Yeah.
You're gonna
Yeah.
have it'll be chaos. It would be crazy if that happened. I just we've seen so many fights, dude, and the stuff like
Yeah.
that doesn't happen. Like
No,
it
more
just
more
doesn't
times than not.
happen.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, maybe this will be the one in 1,000. Maybe
Yeah.
it will be, and that's obviously what people are hanging their coats on here. But like,
Yeah.
it doesn't happen, folks. Like, I mean, I mean, I feel like we're gonna see it with Stipe Miocic and John Jones. Like, we haven't seen Stipe in a long, long time, and I think he's
Yeah.
gonna come out there, and you're gonna be like, well, this isn't even the 38-year-old Stipe. Now we got like a 43-year-old. We saw it with Fedor. Like there was glimpses. There was glimpses against Johnson in
Yeah.
Russia. There was glimpses, like, but those glimpses were seconds in a minutes of time. Like it was just there wasn't enough. And in MMA you can get dropped once and the fight's over. In this boxing, like you could get beat the hell up and like, I mean, talk about pressure on a ref. Like, you talk about trying to wave a fight off in the first, second round with Tyson still on his feet. Like, I mean, stuff like that's not going to be easy to work around. I feel
Mhm.
like it's a situation where they're talking each other into a fight where someone's got to go down. And I mean, I have a feeling if I'm betting money, I'm betting money on the 30-year-old over the 60-year-old. Like,
Yeah.
that's just how it is. So we'll see when that comes around. But speaking of some other stuff that went on this past weekend, not to get too deep into stuff, you talked about pacing. We had the Craig Jones International and or Invitational, and we had the ADCC 2024. Last year, we really praised ADCC, and then I don't know all the politicking and stuff that kind of separated the two. So you had talent all around. Um, but I would say overall, it was a win for the grappling community.
Yeah,
When the weekend was all said and done, you had some
for
really good,
sure.
like Micah Galvo. I mean, I know Andre Galvo. I know, stuff like that. But I didn't know this Micah Galvo really impressed the hell out of me. I mean, he's subbing a lot of dudes over in ADCC. We saw Mackenzie Dern get up a reverse triangle armbarred um, in her super fight.
Against Fionn
Um,
Davies, yeah. Yeah, that's
yeah,
good.
I mean, so there was some stuff that was really kind of notable and some really good matches. But to go to on Friday night, this Craig Jones went till 1:30 a.m. my time.
Yeah.
So I
I
mean,
didn't watch it all.
I know, but to be on the East Coast, I think you're going to be watching at 4:30 in the morning. It's
Hmm.
insane. Um, I feel sorry in a sense. Like I meant to ask, some of the people that were there, like, did they allow leaving and coming back? Because the idea of showing up at like noon for a start of it and it not ending for 12 hours later in Las Vegas, like, dude, I mean, I'm not a big drinker, but come about 7 hours of grappling, I got to go have a couple cocktails. Like, I mean, that's just not to mention eating and
Yeah,
everything else that you're in Las Vegas. It just seems like it's an extreme thing that they need
yeah,
to bring down. Maybe instead of going from 16 men, we do it down to 8 or even 4. Especially for something like this, but with $1 million on the line. Um, you know, the one thing that also came out of ADC, no, Craig Jones, that has some relevance to me is Cade Rotolo
mhm,
winning his division, winning the $1 million because he's got a super fight with Mikey Musumeci coming up in a couple weeks at One Colorado, which now adds to the story
yeah,
there and adds stacks onto that. So I mean, I didn't
yeah,
really see anybody other than the timing and maybe too many interviews and stuff like that. I think it was a winning
yeah,
for the community over there. So
yeah. Truzella is
yeah,
saying, yeah. When I saw that thing with like not. That's one thing about the fandom now that I don't get is like you realize that these men are professional, like they're walking weapons, and you're gonna even me, who's a hobbyist martial artist, would I have the sense to not pick a fight with a guy that whose job it is to fight, or even if they're some regional like low ranked professional fighter, they're still a professional fighter. You don't want to you don't want to poke those bears. So I mean, and you could tell whatever he said, and Murad. I mean, if I know he jumped the stands and got to the guy, but then he showed restraint because I guess he saw the look of fear in the guy's eyes, and he still just shook him and walked away. But
I
it's
thought it was perfect. I thought it was
yeah,
perfect, and I'd like to see more fighters do it. Um, at least getting in people's faces and letting them know that maybe if they don't shut their mouth, that it might be the last time they have teeth in their mouth. Like I'm not for walking up to that fan and Marab did it perfectly to me. Like
yeah,
make that dude piss his pants.
which
Make
he
him
did.
realize that I'm never gonna say that again
Yeah,
because Marab's a 135 pounder. You got Francis Ngannou walking up. I mean, don't get me wrong, Marab will pritzel you and kill you just as quick. But the factor of the bigger human being and you just didn't do that. That's a fighters. That's world class fighters. I wouldn't go to your jujitsu gym and walk in there and be like, and none of you are necessarily trained fighters on that level, but you could kill me. I'm not stupid. You know what I mean? Maybe I go in there with one of your white belts and I'm able to defend myself, but anything over a white, like 3-week-old white belt, like I'm out of my friggin' element. Like you have to know what you're walking into. We've talked about it from the respect of the old days. You didn't even boo fighters because you didn't want to give off.
No, and that's one of the things
disrespect.
I used to say is when I used to go to a lot of live events to cover fights. There was always like I never saw anyone get too crazy, and now we ever since I guess I guess it's because of the COVID 2020 to 2023, the fans that have immersed throughout that little gap of time are these weird people that think you can do like this I don't know, this prank shit and put it on YouTube. Like guys asking fighters to actually hit them and then record it so they can go viral. And it's like, dude, you realize these, like, I mean, look up how Harry Houdini died. For God's sake, like, what the fuck is wrong with people?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about clicks. They make money through their streams or whatever they're doing. I'd like to see the fighters. I'd like to see the. I mean, I don't think the UFC will do it because it's their. They understand that there's promotion for them, even if it's bad promotion. But I'd like to see the fighters come together and be like, "Hey, we're not going to answer questions for these guys. We're not like."
Yeah.
The minute
well,
disrespect,
you would need
like,
a union to do that.
well, you need a union, or you just need a handful of fighters at a press conference to be like, "Hey, guys." Like the first time a YouTuber comes up there and asks us about who we had sex with this past weekend, like we all get up and we just walk off the stage.
Yeah.
And we don't answer, and that's it. We're done. We like they disrespect Holly Holm, they disrespect Kayla Harrison. They tell Nate Diaz they're gonna kill him in the park. The minute that happens, we just get up and walk away. We're too good for this. This is not we're not trying to make a name for ourselves anymore. We are the UFC. We are Nick Diaz, Nate Diaz. We are our own entities. We don't have to prove ourselves.
That's actually a really good segue. Like even when Adesanya, who's kind of like part of it, but he said something along the lines like when he was talking to Mighty Mouse about those types of characters. He was like, they're not even fit to smell our jockstrap, and we're giving them these platforms to like kind of. It was a Mighty Mouse podcast. He said something to that effect. But I mean, this is a good segue into the pay-per-view this weekend. Speaking of Israel Adesanya.
And speaking of UFC 305, yeah, I mean, decent event, main event, Dricus du Plessis, 4th round submission. The thing I kick myself about is that was my pick. I was going to come on here last week and pick him by 4th round submission. And I even went through the records to try to see if I had said it anywhere else. And I couldn't.
Yeah, I should have asked you. I should have asked you for yours because, I had recorded myself and I had my picks written down. And the fact that we were both, that would have been good because, I mean, I had Adesanya, obviously. And, obviously I was wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I just, the fight went essentially how in my mind it played out. I didn't think that Adesanya would get as much offense off as he did. So I thought he would have more trouble surviving the early ground game, whereas he was able to kind of fight it off. His use of body shots is obviously a game changer and a great game plan that actually kept him in the fight. I felt like because he hurt him at the body and he took some of the gas out of du Plessis, and I think that's what allowed him to actually get the 4th round and not necessarily get like subbed even in like the 2nd round, because I feel like it just seems like it's a bad matchup. And I don't know even what we're watching, if I'm being honest. Like if somebody said, what's du Plessis' style?
Yeah.
Like I couldn't explain.
Jerky.
I would almost say like total disregard for your chin, just charging in, like doing everything against the rules other than pressure.
And I saw a lot of people complaining, like, how the fuck, all that stuff with du Plessis. And even myself, like, it's one of the reasons why I picked Adesanya over du Plessis. But it made me think after reading the comments and after the fact, it jumped in my head on Sunday morning that I was like, man, and I would have written something about it or posted something about it if I wasn't covering that Fanatics nonsense in the city. It made me think of, and I can't remember. You'll probably remember. This is why I have it written down to mention it to you. In the Evan Tanner documentary, I forget what fighter says the first time he fought Evan Tanner, it was complete. Like he actually got his ass kicked because Evan Tanner was self-trained, so he came at him with with all this like spazzy craziness. I mean, a person that's just like when I go against another jiu-jitsu player, it's kind of, it looks like what you see on TV. But when you go against someone that just comes at you with like insanity, it's harder to deal with because you're not used to that. You were used to that when you didn't know anything, but like you get used to a certain way of doing things, and it's like that with fighting. It's like that like with when I did striking arts. It was the same thing. Like if a new guy came at me with some craziness, it took me a while to figure him out before I was just like, and it's literally the same game plan, like pop him in the gut, take the wind out of him or hit him in the liver, and that shuts off everything. But it just seems like that seems to be Duplessis' game, is just let me come at you with some fucking, Yu-Gi-Oh shit and see if see if it works.
I mean, he's a finishing machine. So
Yeah.
like it goes to the fact that when we kind of like the frustration of watching some fights where you're like, I wish the dude would just go for it. I wish he would just like risk life and limb and go for it, because I feel like this dude could finish this guy if he just pressured the hell out of him and went for it. But a lot of guys kind of step back. I feel like we're kind of seeing a guy who's like, dude, I'm just going to keep going for it. And like right now, he's got a long run of finishes going. I feel like once he gets a step slower, it's going to be a brutal end to his career, because all of a sudden the guy will be countering his come in
Yeah.
and hooking it. Like, I mean, it could be Alex Bahia if he
I was just
hesitates.
gonna say, it seems like I mean, it seems like that's one people want to see, but obviously Pajeda's got Roundtree to worry about. But though this I keep forgetting, and I know they addressed it in the post fight press conference. I didn't listen to it because I couldn't hear it very well. The judge that got replaced, that was for which fight?
That was for Tuivasa and Rosenstruck,
Yeah.
and I mean, Rosenstruck I had winning 3-0 maybe 29-28 by like a hair, maybe given Tuivasa a round. The one judge gave it to him 30-27.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like while he got replaced, I thought Dan Hooker lost too. I thought Gamrot beat him. I thought it was a fairly close fight. I'm not saying it was a robbery, but if that fight takes place anywhere other than Australia, I feel like Gamrot wins that decision 85% of the time, because you don't have the crowd cheering one guy's near misses as opposed to ignoring the other guy's strikes. And again, not a robbery. I'm not claiming that. It didn't seem like I disagreed with the decision on that. And I feel like there was another one too where no, maybe that was the only the two, but yeah,
maybe the one with the what's his name, Junior Tafa with
the Junior Tafa. I actually missed that. I went to go. I had to run out to do a couple things for that prelim. But I know that was again, we get in a situation where people don't know about verbal submission. Like we're at UFC 30. We've had with the fight nights, like 900 events, and I got Dominic Cruz and John Anik don't know what a verbal submission is. I mean, it's like
I don't think it wasn't that they didn't know. I think it was more along because Junior was more. I mean, he even slapped what's his opponent's name? I don't
know. Walter Walker.
Yeah, that's right. He even slapped him in the face when it happened, like as if it was a bad call. But I'm
pretty sure you openly had Anik and Cruz, at least according to like Caposa and some of the big names online, like openly discussing during the broadcast.
Yeah, they were, because they were like he yelled like that's a verbal tap, and it was Junior that was kind of like trying to say I didn't tap, but it's like, dude, you freaking cried out when the heel hook was locked in, and he rolled with him and stuff too. But I mean, that's one thing. I mean, it's weird because in striking you can throw strikes and make all the noises you want because it helps tense your body, so in case you receive a hit at the same time. But when it comes to grappling, if you're yelling and grappling, that's just a big no. I mean, usually you yell when shit is popped loose,
You can't allow it because you can't have a sport where a guy could have his arm being wrenched, screaming bloody murder, and then you just allow the guy's arm to get mangled because he doesn't want to tap out. Like,
so him yelling, him yelling because of or him disputing the stoppage. I mean, it's his own fault. Don't yell. If he didn't have the heel hook, then you wouldn't have yelled.
Correct. And there's been situations where dudes couldn't tap out and actually had to use the verbal to save their limbs. So, I just the whole, I know Twitter's not the real world, but the amount of people that claim to watch this sport for 20 years that had no idea that you can have a verbal submission, or claiming that the sport somehow lacks because you're not allowed just to scream in pain, like, odd. I just, I mean, you might not know how it's labeled in the record books, but like, you certainly should know that if a guy screams out in pain in the middle of a fight,
I can't remember.
Stop it.
I can't remember the one CFFC fight. I don't remember who the fighters were, but where the probably the worst ref I've ever seen, where even the fighter that got the submission, he bends the other guy's arm backward. He's from the bottom too, and the guy tapped, and the referee just seemed to not do anything. And for anyone that doesn't know, when you're when you're the competitor, you have to keep going until the ref stops you, unless. Like, he got so pissed off that he's cursing as he gets a submission. He lets the guy go, and he feels bad about the arm, and he instantly went after the ref. Like, what the fuck, man? Like, it was a CFFC event a couple of years ago. I want to say 2-3 years ago. For some reason I can't remember the fighters, but the arm literally goes from straight 90 degrees, and I don't know why. I guess the guy didn't want to tap, but he cried out, and that's how people get hurt. If you have an ego in grappling, just for FYI, if you don't do jiu-jitsu and you're thinking about it, I mean, if the move is in and it's in, you can take a little bit of the pain, but don't test yourself. Tap, otherwise you're gonna be out for a long time.
Yeah, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. But that was that. Kai Kara France picks up a big first round knockout over Steve Urseg.
Oh yeah, I got that one wrong too.
Listen, like, I didn't know a lot about Urseg going into his fight with Pantoja. I mean, it seems like he got a little overhyped, a little too soon, and
I think that's.
I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but like, to not know who he is going into a title fight, and sure, call me a casual, I guess, for not knowing who he was. What he had 1 or 2 fights in the UFC on some Apex cards or something, but I didn't know a lot about him, and I know Kai Kara France. I know he's a dog, and while he has a dozen losses or so, he brings it every time. So it wasn't super surprising to me to see that, but it was definitely a highlight reel knockout. Carlos Prates on the prelims against Li Jinglang.
Oh yeah, that one I got right.
Outstanding knockout. Super skilled. I mean, the guy's got 6 losses too, which is a little bit surprising, but the skill he shows is like, I mean, some speed. It's almost like Vitor Belfort style of speed and precision on some of his punches, which is fun to watch because those are the guys that I'm into. But overall, decent card. I'm just not real sure where we're at right now. Like I said, Duplessis, I'll watch him fight because I'm almost guaranteed a finish one way or another, I feel like. Strickland, I just feel like we're in an era now where it's like really, really weird where we're at. Like, the days of Anderson Silva and Dan Henderson are so far gone now that I don't even know. I mean, I don't know. I don't know where, I know that headline's an event, but like, are you excited to see Strickland and Duplessis too? I mean, other than it just being the middleweight title and like it's a rematch from a close fight, but like, I don't feel like, to me, it's not can't miss. If something else better is going on that night, like, or like, I don't know. To me, it's not a can't miss second fight. Like, Duplessis, Pajea's can't miss no matter who he's fighting. But it just kind of is we're in a weird thing because I don't know. It's like, this guy's the best guy fighter in the world. He's 22-2. but I can't even wrap my head around what I'm watching.
And as you're saying that, I'm watching Dana White not give Therese Finney a contract, even though he won. I don't know what the audio is on it. I'll listen to it after this podcast. But it's like, dude, the guy's literally now 9-0, undefeated. Okay, he went to a decision. I'm not sure what the. I mean, he slammed the guy that was literally double his size. I don't know what I don't know the rhyme or reason of the UFC anymore. But I mean, Therese Finney was somebody I thought the middleweight division could use because it's a little like you said. I don't know what that used to be one of my favorite divisions, and right now I'm
Yeah, I mean, I heard some comments about the fight. I don't think it was the most spectacular fight, but again, like what I the reality is that it's not about no long. I mean, and Kevin McLaren will be the first to tell you that it doesn't matter how good the fighters are anymore. It's all about entertainment and it's all about making money. There's no
yeah
if you can have 8 garbage men on a card, then you take the 8 garbage men because you don't have to pay them anything. Like that, it's every I don't again. I mean, these guys got to take the shot, I guess, because they feel like it's a quickest way to the UFC. But dude, if I'm Finney, just go win 8 more fights. Get 17-0. Go beat up a bunch of nobodies in the regional. I mean, to me, like that's you make it undeniable. Like I mean, if you're, I don't know, but then you got guys who are fighting who are 5-3, who can't defend even the most basic
I mean, he's
ground
made it
fight.
pretty undeniable. If you look at his last fight before this fight, he shut the dude off like in seconds.
Oh, I know,
So
I know.
I
I mean,
don't.
I get, but uh, they're just,
So,
but then I don't know. Obviously it's not working. I mean, obviously,
yeah.
and that's the thing. Like they'll take a guy who's 5-5 who gets a head kick knockout in 15 seconds over the guy who's 9-0 who's actually beat some competition, been through some. I mean, if a guy who's 9-0 with his track record has a 29-28 fight, it sounds to me like he fought a pretty good dude.
Yeah.
Like, so like, but that gets held against you. Like if they give
Yeah.
you if they give you the garbage man and you knock him out, you get the contract. If they give you the other guy who you'd be fighting in the UFC on a prelim card and you
Mm-hmm.
barely win, you're not good enough for the UFC.
Yeah.
So it's the whole thing is weird. I just I know we're 30 years into this, but I think it's to the point now we just need to understand it's not an actual sport. It's not. No matter what we want to say, there's no sporting aspect to 99% of it. Most of it is strictly promotion. How much money can you bring us? And that's where you're going to get your fight. I mean, see Khalil Roundtree versus Pahea getting announced. How
Mm.
is Ankalaev not getting this fight? The guy's clearly the number 1 contender at light heavyweight, but he's a heavy grappler who could easily bore the hell out of everybody into beating Pahea and carrying that title for the next 3 years by just grappling people. And the UFC just doesn't want that. They would rather have the belt change hands every 3 events by a knockout than have the guy who's actually the best fighter and wins by the rules that are in place to win. I mean, I don't know. That's kind of why I'm like one. Like right now, I like that one has kind of gone away from MMA. Like let's just cut the shit out. Like we got John Lineker now fighting in Colorado in a Muay Thai fight. Like why put him in an MMA fight where he could potentially get like nobody wants to watch John Lineker get grappled out. So let's just cut the shit. Let's put him in a fight with 4-ounce gloves Muay Thai and somebody's going timber. You know what I mean? Like and I kind of appreciate that better than the hey, we're the best in the world. This is the best 185er in the world, never or best 205, but he's not actually going to fight the number 1 contender. He's going to fight a guy who just tested positive for illegal substances less
Mm.
than 6 months ago and was pulled from a card. Like I don't know. I mean, to me, it's a weird dynamic. Now I'll watch the fight because it's going to be a banger. Someone's going to get drilled, but I'm also not. If Khalil Roundtree wins, I'm not going to think Khalil Roundtree is the best 205er in the world.
Mm.
No matter what. No matter what.
Yeah. I don't know. I like Khalil Roundtree. I don't mind the
Yeah.
matchup, to be honest with you, but I get where everyone's coming from. If you're if you have the rankings, why aren't you using them?
Correct. Let's just get
But
rid of the rankings. Let's
yeah,
just get rid of the rankings. I
yeah,
mean, but even number one contender fights, who did Khalil Roundtree beat that you can name that's ranked?
I'd have to look at his record, but I can't.
I mean, I again, like I get it. He beat Gokhan Saki 6 years ago, and he has some nice wins. Did he beat Uriah Hall? Or I can't even remember that fight anymore now. But like, it's just weird to me that just back to the Torrey Finney thing. Roundtree can beat three dudes that aren't even in the UFC anymore and get a title shot. Ankalaev can beat everybody ranked in the top 10, and he doesn't get it. There's
Hey man,
no.
look at what they did to Bilal Muhammad. He was ranked. I mean, he was always next in line, and but like you said, it's you got to remember who owns the UFC. I mean, TKO Group. It used to be IMG. William Morris Endeavor is a modeling company.
Yeah.
That they're looking for stars. They don't want fighters. They want
They
stars.
don't. I mean, the reality is Muhammad should have got that title fight like 3 fights sooner in to replace like Covington.
Yeah.
I was it 296 or 294. Well, I don't remember when I was at it. Covington went for the title shot there, and it was just kind of a boring fight. And I mean, that's the fight. But they have to get over again. It's about making money, and they don't think a guy can be a headliner. But I'd rather guys that earn the shot get the shot, even if they're not the most spectacular fighters, because that's what makes the sport somewhat real. That's there's a lot of guys who weren't good looking. I mean, if Fedor came into the UFC wouldn't even give him a look. They'd say, "Hey, he's a pudgy Russian. We don't want anything to do with the guy." I mean, that's
Your boy Jake Sage is just finding out about Roundtree apparently because we're talking about it. Yeah, they announced it on Friday or Saturday. I forgot what day, but yeah, they announced it over the weekend.
And again, I like Roundtree, man. I watch his fights. He's violent. I think it's going to be a knockout fight, but it's just not. It's the champ versus a guy who's probably borderline top 10 in any normal ranking system that actually has weight, as opposed to fighting the number one contender who they conveniently booked 2 weeks prior to fight the number 3 ranked guy. Meanwhile, Blachowicz, who somewhere in this mix, like, I don't know. The whole thing is just odd, but it's the UFC. It's 2024. It's how money and fights are made. And I mean, nothing should say more than a gate of 60 million for Dashvili and O'Malley. I mean, a good fight, but it's going to go down in history as the record-breaking gate for the most watched and most paid for fight in the history of fighting. And
has nothing. Yeah.
Odds.
Anyway, yeah. I mean, we might as well wrap it up. I got some work to do, so.
Yeah, no, I think we said enough. I'm not sure exactly what we got. Look forward to next week. We'll get into that, but then we got the one card in Colorado, which I'll be traveling to, so we'll get super deep into that.
We got
to that.
It's what's his name? UFC Vegas '96 back in the Apex. It's Cannonier and I forgot him.
And Bahalis or Baharis. Good fight. That's this weekend. There's also a K1 event this weekend. I know K1's. I think it's K1 Brazil. I don't know how the streaming options are for that, but that's Michael Chavello on the call, and old school like Guto Innocent on the is in the tournament. So he's an old school Strikeforce UFC fighter that I tend to root for and watch fights. So I'm gonna try to catch some of that in between some of the other stuff. But yeah, but a good past weekend of entertainment. So. Until the next time, fans can follow the show at Combat Hour on Twitter, Coast-to-Coast Combat Hour on Instagram. Follow me, Matthew Hawkins, at MMAHawk21 on Twitter and Instagram. Follow Ed at Carbazol on Twitter, Carbeerzol on Instagram, Old Head Carb on Twitch. Thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for a few of the comments, and we'll talk to you next week.
Peace.